very new session designed by Toastmasters International just this year. It's called Effective Meetings. So everyone here, if you think we don't have enough virtual meeting already, please raise your hand. I think the worst thing you could imagine is you leave a meeting, feel, oh, I just wasted all this time. And today, our distinguished Toastmaster Willie Johnson is definitely coming to help us to do better. If one thing you need to know about Willie, I think you need to know he has been a Toastmaster for more than 20 years, and he really loves Toastmasters as an organization, and he always give back to our District 43 by coaching and helping the trio team, the district leadership team, and the clubs and members. And another thing you might want to know about Willie is that as a speaking competitor at heart, Willie has entered and won numerous club, area, division, and district level speech contests, and was a semi-finalist in Toastmasters 2013 International Speech Contest, finishing in the top 88. Out of 32,000 contestants across 122 countries. Willie also once won the Toastmaster of the Year in our District 43. And today it's my honor to have Willie Johnson, Distinguished Toastmaster, to present us this brand new session, Effective Meetings.
Hello, everyone. And it gives me great pleasure to facilitate this new session for you. And for those that do not know, as Lou said, my name is Willie Johnson. I've been around for a couple of days at least, and I am going to do my best to give you some things relative to effective meetings, because I'm one of those people that believe we need to understand how to run an effective meeting. In fact, I was in a club executive meeting about 3 weeks ago. In fact, it was 3 weeks ago, and it was totally bad. And notice I used the word totally twice. It really was bad. So one of the things that I would hope that particular club views this particular presentation and learn from it. As we said right from the beginning, if you need to rename yourself, go ahead and rename yourself so that we know who you are. Hopefully you all, before tonight, got the session workbook. But if you didn't, don't worry about it. I'm going to give you time to be able to do all the little exercises that we are going to do. I'm going to just move right along. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those questions, and Lou will be more than glad to answer any questions that you have. Again, our agenda for these effective meetings, we are going to be discussing what's wrong with meetings. And I'm sure if I open the floor right now to ask you what's wrong with meeting, I'd get all of these answers. And the reason I'm glad about that is because you'll have an opportunity to speak about those in the chat room. The next thing that we're actually going to be talking about is meeting best practices. And I know we all have, strategies and practices that we can share amongst everybody on how to hold a great meeting. And so tonight, those are the main two things that we're actually going to be talking about. And if you have any comments or questions, just raise your hand, put a comment in the chat. And if you put a comment in the chat, our chat master will stop me and we'll try to answer those questions before moving along. That said, this is our objective. That's our agenda. This is our objective. Our objective is to basically identify and develop. And when we talk about identifying, I've already said it. What are some of the barriers that prevent us from having great meetings? What are some of the barriers that prevent us from having great meetings? And I can tell you one right now, we just don't listen to each other. We don't respect each other when we go into a meeting, or somebody is sitting there with their arms folded and says, why am I here? So they just close down. So in the chat groups, that's what we're going to be talking about, identifying some of these barriers to best practices of having effective meetings. And then in the second chat, we are actually going to develop some of those strategies. And hopefully everybody in this session will contribute to the material at hand that will be discussed in the chat. And as we move around, like I said, the first thing we're going to do is talk about what's wrong with meetings. And I've already given you a couple of reasons that we have bad meetings, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about that in a breakout room. And then after I give you the time in the breakout room, we'll come back as a whole group and discuss some of the things that you came up with in your breakout room. So again, when you're in your breakout rooms, I would challenge everyone to participate. And before we go to the breakout rooms, let me just share some other information with you. So once we get ready to go to the breakout room, these are just some tips. And I know everybody already know those tips, but I just want to share them again. You want to click on the breakout room button to join the breakout room. And Lou already explained that. That's those little 4 squares on the bottom. And while you're in the breakout room, you can use tools as needed for share screen, annotate, whiteboard, and those type of things. In your breakout rooms, please, please, please assign a timekeeper, because I will tell you exactly how much time you have in your break room before you need to come back to the main room. So please assign yourself a timekeeper. You want to also watch for broadcasts and chat messages, just in case somebody has anything to say, has a question to ask, you'll be able to see those. And last but not least, there's always a help button, which is the question mark on the bottom that you can utilize. So ladies and gentlemen, those are some of the break room tips. Now that the tips are over, I'm going to give you your instructions. So please pay very attention to this. So what you're actually going to do is you're going to join your team in the breakout room, and the breakout rooms will be set up automatically, so you won't be able to determine which break room you're in. Our Zoom master is just going to randomly select people and put them in a breakout room. Now you can use your session workbook or just a piece of paper to brainstorm and list what makes a meeting ineffective. Notice keyword ineffective. Then determine, based on what you come up with, then determine the impact of each of those items on your list. You know, what are some of those things that make meetings ineffective? And then discuss what are some of the impacts that it has. And you'll have 10 minutes in your breakout room. So Lou and Zoom Master, would you send everyone to the breakout rooms? Well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. I certainly hope that each and every one of you participated in the discussion in the break room. That being the case, now comes the time for us to discuss what you discussed. And we do have a chat monitor. So what I'd like for you to do is put your comments in the chat to answer the question that you see on the screen. What was one thing discussed as being ineffective during a meeting? So if you will put those things in the chat room, and as the chat master is reading those back to me, we will make various comments or, you know, just replies to whatever you say. So whatever is in the chat room, Carrie, just go ahead and tell me what's there, and we will make comments on each one of them relative to what was the one thing discussed as being ineffective during a meeting. I know there was a lot of things, but to them, what was one thing discussed as being ineffective during a meeting? So let's see what you came up with.
Well, Willie, I am seeing right off the bat a couple of comments about no agenda or the agenda is not adhered to.
Wow. Isn't that, I mean, that is so classic. I mentioned early on that I attended a Toastmasters Club executive meeting about 3 weeks ago, and they had an agenda, but it was just a piece of paper laying there. That means they didn't follow it. They didn't actually know what was on it. Somebody just put it together. And it's so very true in an actual business meeting. People will call a meeting. We're going to have a meeting about this, or we're going to have a meeting about that. And no one has been notified as to who is going to be a speaker, how much time they have to report out, and those type of things. So when I think about those two comments, they really, really are ineffective things that take place at a meeting. Because see, if you don't have an agenda, how can you even have a meeting? Thanks, Carrie. What else?
Well, we're seeing more of lack of structure, no agenda. So that agenda is very important, and obviously something that some people are missing. We're also that people are unprepared or are not showing up on time.
Well, when people are not prepared, thank you for that. People are not prepared because, number one, they have not been informed early enough that there was going to be a meeting. Sometimes people are not informed because somebody, their bosses or somebody else says, hey, there's a meeting at 2:00. I want you to be there to sit in for me. Those people are not prepared. And then when people show up late, the only thing that I can say about people that show up late, they just want to be noticed. For the majority part, they really, really just want to be noticed. One of the things I do on those days that I have many meetings, I set my timepiece, my watch, 10 minutes ahead of time, and that's what I go by. So I know that I'm never really going to be late when it comes to meetings. So one of the things both of the things that you just said, Carrie, people don't know, and getting to a meeting on time is just bad. And when I think about meetings and people not being there on time, they think that they're actually controlling the meeting, because what they expect is everybody to wait till they get there. But a good person will go ahead and start the meeting without them. Great comments. What else?
Well, this goes along with not being prepared, but it looks like some people are having a challenge with having their roles filled, or people not fulfilling their roles and not participating in the meeting as they should.
Okay, that's an interesting comment there. One of the things that I will say, this particular session of an effective meeting only applies to like a club executive meeting or a business meeting. It does not apply to a regular normal club meeting, because a regular normal club meeting is not really in the category of being a meeting. So when I think about the comments there on people not filling their roles and things like that, just remember that the things that we are actually discussing in this section basically applies like if you're having a club executive meeting, or we're having a business meeting at your office or something like that. But it really does not, these strategies does not apply to just having a regular club meeting.
Another thing might be having the meeting go on and on and on and on, and no end in sight.
Well, yeah, that's for somebody that doesn't have anything better to do. And when somebody doesn't have an agenda, they'll call an hour meeting, and then 30 minutes later, they're saying, oh, we want to discuss this, we want to discuss that. And therein goes back to what was in the comment earlier, in the chat earlier. Agenda. That means somebody knows that we're going to be there starting at 5:00, and we're going to be finished at 6:30. And those people that are on the program, the business program, have been notified, and their slot is listed on the agenda. If that is not the case, that's when you have the scenario of going on and on and on and on about nothing. In fact, that is the same thing that happened at the club executive meeting that I attended about 3 weeks ago. It just went on and on and on. In fact, it was about 45 minutes over the time that they were actually supposed to be meeting. And you can imagine I was very disturbed because I really didn't want to leave the meeting, but I was disturbed because it was 45 minutes over. Thank you, Richard. What else?
The last thing that I think pertaining to all kinds of meetings, Willie, is what you were just talking about. And that is some of them not focused on the right things, or the timeliness of the meeting is not adhered to. In other words, we're not respecting the time of other people when we're involved in a meeting.
Yes, that's so very, very true. We don't respect each other in some of those business meetings and the executive club meeting. We don't respect each other. So if we don't respect each other, we don't listen to them. You know, habit 5 of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. That, ladies and gentlemen, works in meetings. So one of the things we have to do is we have to be able to respect the leader of the meeting, the other people around the table, and understand that we have to follow agenda. Y'all just think, when I think about a meeting, this tonight is a sort of a meeting. Do you know what would happen if we don't follow the time limits on the agenda for our session tonight? We will probably be here till midnight. And so one of the things we have to do is we really, really must follow the agenda, because it is the agenda and that takes us into the right direction on how to hold that meeting and what we're going to do and how much time we're going to be in place. And as we move right along, one of the things that I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there are 7 shortcomings of meetings. And I'm actually going to cover some of those right now. The first one is people don't take meetings seriously. Now, I know that people don't take meetings seriously because I happen to have been to meetings where, like I was telling you about the one that I went to 3 weeks ago, and it was a club executive meeting. People didn't take those meetings seriously. They were just there to try to beat up on this person or that person or whatever the case may be. People also do not take meetings seriously because all of a sudden somebody said you have to be in that meeting. And so what we don't want to do is just be in a meeting for the sake of being in a meeting. So when you think about some of the shortcomings of meetings, many times people do not take meetings seriously because we have so very many. Also, meetings are too long. Have you ever heard somebody saying, well, I've been in a meeting today for 4 hours? Well, what did you accomplish? Meetings are really too very long. And a lot of those meetings, I must say that I've experienced, a lot of those meetings are just meetings to talk about the things that you talked about in the previous meeting. So they really are too long. Also, people wander off topic. They just become unfocused and they don't focus on the things at hand. And when they don't focus on the things at hand, and then they start bringing up things or asking questions about something that's not on the agenda, and the person that's leading the meeting lets it go on and go on and go on and go on, that's when they begin to lose people. So people just wander off topic. And nothing happens once the meeting ends. Just think about it. Everybody just grouped together and had a major discussion. And then they went on and did the same thing that they've been doing all along, and they don't take any action of doing any of the things that came up in the meeting. Another one is just this: people don't tell the truth. Think about it. In a meeting, people don't tell the truth. They tell what they think somebody wants to hear. But in a meeting, a true meeting, and I'm not necessarily talking about a club meeting, I'm talking about a business meeting. Many times what we find is people really don't tell the truth. They tell a half truth. They really do tell a half truth. And also, critical decisions are postponed. And the reason that critical decisions are postponed is because of some of all the stuff that you see there. People wander off topic. Nothing's going to happen at the end of the meeting. And people don't tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So how are you going to be able to make a critical decision? You just won't be able to do it. People make the same mistakes over and over again. The same mistakes over and over again. So when you think about it, they just make the same mistakes over and over again. Does anybody have any comment on those 7?
Spot on.
If not, what we want to understand is be aware of the 7 shortcomings of meetings. And I just went over those with you, so just be aware of those. And anytime you're leading a meeting, please ensure that you strategically plan your meeting. By that, you set the agenda and you set the objective. Does anybody have any questions? Now we're actually going to talk about the meeting best practices. Meeting best practices. I'm going to send everybody to the chat, and we're actually going to be talking about meeting best practices. Meeting best practices. And by that, here's the tips again. Click on the break room. Use Zoom tools as necessary. Please ensure that you assign a timekeeper, and then watch for broadcast messages. And of course, if you need help, just press the help button and the Zoom master will be more than glad to help you. These are the instructions for this particular breakout session. Using the session workbook, if you have it, and the information from the 7 shortcomings of meetings that I just gave to you, brainstorm best practice for addressing your assigned shortcomings, whatever they are. Just what are some things you can do to address those shortcomings that I listed, and then complete the questions to consider. And if you have your workbook, you'll know what those are. If you don't worry about it. We're just going to come back and brainstorm and talk about the best practices that you came up with and some of the ones that you didn't come up with. But again, if you have any questions along the way, don't ask Willie Johnson, ask Lou. She has all the answers. She is our program quality director, and she has all the answers. So as you go into the breakout room, you see there that you'll have 15 minutes in the breakout rooms. And I was just teasing Lou, so everybody know that I was just teasing Lou, giving her something to smile about. So as you go to the breakout rooms, you'll have about 15 minutes.
Distinguished Toastmaster Johnson, we are all back with you now.
Thank you, Zoom Master. Without a Zoom Master, I would be LOST. I'm not going to say that out loud, but without a Zoom Master, I would be LOST. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking an opportunity to go into the chat room and discuss best practices. And at this time, we're going to record in the chat box, just like we did last time. If you will just type it in the chat box, and Carrie will let me know what's in the chat box to answer to the question, what was your top best practice you discussed to address shortcomings? And I didn't mean your shortcomings, just to address shortcomings. What was the top best practice you discussed to address shortcomings? Or if you want to, just your shortcomings. So go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll see what's in the chat, Carrie, and we'll comment on that.
Oh, Willie, so coming in right out of the gate is what you've already talked a lot about. That's that timed agenda, and it's in all caps.
Yeah, the timed agenda, the time agenda. That means people need to understand what time it starts and what time it ends. Similar to like a Toastmasters meeting. If your Toastmasters meeting is from 6 to 7, therefore it should start at 6 and end at 7 to have respect for all the members and be respectful to any guests that come. So in a meeting, your executive board meetings and your business meetings, yes, absolutely, all caps. You have to have a timed agenda. So people don't go on and on and on about nothing. Just like I told you, I attended a club executive meeting 3 weeks ago, and it was 45 minutes over. What else?
Well, timeliness seems to be a topic, but here's one interesting comment that I like is address a safe environment to tell the truth or to be able to speak your mind.
Well, yeah, that's what you always want to do. You want, it's all about integrity with me. I mean, really, really, it's integrity with me, building trust, being a person of high character and integrity. I mean, you really have to tell the truth, and the truth hurts. Sometimes the truth hurts, but we can't downplay that. We really, really have to tell the truth. Now, if I'm not leading a meeting, this is what I've done. And when I was in the corporate world, I was one of the training consultants, and I would go to the director of training and development because he was going to be in that meeting as well as myself. And I knew that I had a speaking part. So I would go to the director of training and development and say, look, if I speak, this is what I'm going to say. Do you really want me to go to this meeting? And they'd have to make a decision because I was not going to water the truth. So you always want to maintain high character and tell the truth, even if it hurts. What else? Anything else, Carrie?
So there's another comment about implementing the ideas discussed, and I think that is speaking to making sure that you are able to record what's talked about and then do something with what was discussed about.
Well, yeah, absolutely, especially in our district club district executive meetings. We want to make sure that we record those and take action on things. Sometimes in a corporate environment, for their legal thing, they won't record a meeting because they don't know exactly what somebody is going to say. I'll just be honest with you. There's sometimes, even in a corporate meeting, they're not going to record that meeting because of the topic and those things. And even when they record those meetings, they still don't know where those meetings going to wind up. But for the majority part, yes, you're absolutely correct. You have to record those meetings and then take appropriate action. Because without action, the only thing you did was you had a meeting to talk for an hour. So those are great comments that we had. And as we move along, the thing that you always want to remember as we review the best practices. Design meetings with best practices in mind, whatever they are for you. The agenda, the time, who's going to speak, who needs to be there, and why they need to be there. You want to design those meetings with best practice in mind, and then continue to reflect on the ways to make your meetings more effective and implement change. So from one meeting to the next, to the next, to the next, you can continually improve. You don't have to swing all the way to the right or swing all the way to the left in one great swing. If you're having meetings like in your organization and there's not been an agenda, then you can start it. I mean, people won't follow it initially, but you can do that and at least get them familiar with doing an agenda. So design your meetings with best practice in mind. And just remember, just like it says on the slide, continue to reflect on ways to make your meetings more effective. So ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my presentation to you because I want to turn it over to Lou and Carrie to do their thing in a meeting. But just remember, what we actually talked about is effective meetings. And we also talked about what's wrong with meetings. Just remember those things and some of the best practices that you have with meetings. And the last thing that I would ask you to do is just put one thing in the chat that you're going to implement once you leave this session. Once you leave this session, I'm not going to ask you what they are, but just drop one thing in the chat that you're going to implement when you go back to your job or have an executive meeting. And then at the end, as Lou said right from the beginning, save the chat and you'll have everybody's comment in there. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, thank you, thank you. I will be followed by information about contests and information about the next breakout session. Lou, it's on you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Let's give some virtual love to our presenter, Willie. Wow. Thank you so much for this fun, interactive session you brought to us.